One of the most stressful situations that I incur as a wedding planner with my couples and their families is how to create the wedding guest list. So in today's video, I am going to give you 10 tips on how to curate the most exceptional guest list for your wedding day or a special event. Hi everyone, my name is Pearl Farquharson. If you're watching me for the first time, I am the proprietor of Design by Delsie, a boutique wedding and event design company specializing in remarkable celebrations in New England, Miami, and worldwide. As a wedding planner, I'm often asked, how exactly do I navigate my guest list? With all the family dynamics, the nuances, the drama. How many guests should I invite? Or, would they be, what are the deadlines associated to the guest list? So today, I am going to give you 10 tips on how to master the art of creating the best experience. Tip number 1, don't over-invite. Whenever I am working with my couples, I always like to share, as a general rule of thumb, about 10 to 15% of your guests will not show. What exactly does this mean? Well, if you are inviting about 200 guests on the guest list, 30 guests will not show just for whatever reason. So you'll probably end up with from 200 guests down to 170 that will actually show for the day. However, what we're seeing is as a current trend for 2022 and 2023 weddings is that those averages are actually questionable because everyone wants a really good party, especially if you're cooped up for a long period of time. When you are inviting your guests and thinking about this general rule of thumb, think about the capacity of your venue, especially if before you sign the contract for the venue, make sure that if in the event that you expect 180 guests, that the number associated will be accommodated within the venue that you choose. I think it's important to consider the total number of guests that your venue can hold, especially if the rain plan is different from the good weather plan. Tip number 2, use the ABC method. Now this, I think, is a signature Delsie trick when creating your guest list. So the ABC method refers to the level or priority of your wedding guests as you invite them. Now we all know that everyone is a VVVVVIP. However, how exactly do you cut the list and in what order do you invite your guests to make sure you don't go over? Your A list is going to be defined as the guests that you absolutely cannot imagine your wedding day without. This is going to be your immediate family, perhaps your best friends, your bridal party, and anyone that is really significant or important in your life. Your B list is going to be defined as still very significant guests, but perhaps you might see them once a year or talk to them ever so often. This might be distant cousins or perhaps co-workers that you are close to, or maybe this list involves family members or friends that live in another country that might not be able to make it due to travel restrictions. And then thirdly, the C list will be defined as perhaps maybe friends that you are near and dear to your heart, but perhaps you haven't spoken to for a long time. This might be a childhood friend that you might have lost contact with, or maybe this is going to be your parents' co-workers that, it would be great for them to come, but you might not have the space. Tip number 3, consider family dynamics. I know, we all have big happy families and there's no drama at all ever, and it is like the most magical experience and we don't have to account for any type of drama at your wedding, right? Chances are you're not the 0.0001% of couples getting married, so let's account for those family dynamics. It's very common that while we are putting together the seating chart, we must think about perhaps maybe different relationships that might have been strained, and the last thing you want to do on your wedding day is really worry about someone else's drama. So I think that the seating chart is really a great way to make sure that all the drama is at separate tables, or even better, hire a wedding planner so that your wedding planner can deal with those things for the day. I also think it's important, as we do consider family dynamics, to have these conversations ahead of time. Just because you don't have the conversation does not mean that it's not going to happen. It doesn't exist. I think that the best way to approach really difficult conversations is just being as open and transparent about it as possible. And while you might need to muster up the courage to have these conversations, I think it's also important to have them as soon as possible. This way it can get out the way, everyone can come up with a plan, and then on your day, it will be your day and all eyes will be on you. And what about step families and bonus children? Well, these are all very real components of weddings in our today's age. And so as you're thinking about whom to include in your wedding party, the ceremony, speeches, and formalities, think about how you can incorporate these significant others within the reception or the ceremony. Have these conversations again very early on with your significant others and families, and just make sure that everyone is on the same page. I think that a wedding is a really great opportunity for families to come together, and if we consider all the dynamics that go into making that happen, we would really be able to achieve the vision that you have for your family. Tip number 5, consider allergies and dietary restrictions. So one of my favorite parts about wedding is the food. I know, I might be a food snob, I own it. Might be because I was trained as a chef, and one of my biggest pet peeves is when you go to a wedding and you have these allergies and dietary restrictions and they just give you water and salad. I feel that food, no matter what dietary restriction you have, should be just a huge focal point and a really exciting part of the wedding day. It's important to work with the chef to ensure that all the needs of your guests are taken care of. A dynamic chef will be able to propose different menu options that add balance, creativity, and variety. When the invitations are being sent, I would also recommend that you have a section for which you do ask your guests if they do have any allergies and dietary restrictions. These notes should be relayed to the chef at the very minimum 2 weeks prior to the wedding date. This way, it will give the chef ample time to prepare the menu and make sure your guests are well taken care of. I'm also asked, how exactly do you prepare a balanced meal? And I think that it's a combination of perhaps hot food items versus cold food items, ensuring that there are different varieties of protein, especially a vegetarian or a vegan option. And then last but not least, considering all the major food allergies, some of them soy, dairy, gluten, shellfish, just name a few. Making sure that every guest will have a really impeccable food and beverage experience, and how you can do that is really partnering with the right food provider. Tip number 6, have you ever come across the question, can I bring a +1? Exactly how do you manage to answer that question and do so in a fair way? This brings me to tip number 6, add +1s consistently. There's no set rule on what this means, but I think that if I were to guide couples into thinking about what this means for them, is to sit down and have a conversation with, what do you feel comfortable with? Perhaps it's your friend who asks, can I bring a date? Well, maybe the answer would be yes if they were with their significant other over 6 months, rather than a significant other that they might have met at a bar last week. Tip number 7, create a kid policy. Depending upon the amount of guests you wish to invite, or perhaps the formality of the event, you and your significant other might come up with a kid policy, whether it is absolutely no children at the wedding, or perhaps it's children over the ages of 14, or guests must be 18 to be invited. Whatever decision you decide to come up with for a kid policy, please be sure that it is relayed not on the invitation but on the website. The website is a really great way to relay all these details that you really want to make sure that it is conveyed without feeling like a faux pas or such. This kid policy can also live in the frequently asked questions that you will place on your wedding website. Tip number 8, be sure to remind your guests to RSVP. As a general rule of thumb, I like to have all RSVPs prepared within 4 weeks and nailed down so that we know exactly what to expect for the wedding. Having the RSVP date secured and solidified 1 month prior to the wedding allows us to really put together the seating chart, think strategically, and then also provide final numbers to all of your vendors. As you know, life happens and your guests might be really busy. And so the trick here is that I like to recommend to our couples to tell their guests to kindly RSVP 6 weeks prior. This way, at the 6-week mark, you have 2 weeks to herd all those RSVPs, and then you'll still meet that 1 month deadline so that you will be staying on track. And tip number 10, when creating the guest list, consider how many guests will be coming in from out of town, or if you are planning a destination wedding, make sure to provide the right information and correct information to your wedding guests. Hotel blocks are really essential to every wedding. What I like to do in this situation is choosing at least 3 hotels for the hotel block, but not more than 5. I also like to provide diversity. The first type of hotel that I would recommend is what we would consider a boutique hotel, where this might have a lot of furnishings and amenities that are applicable to the area for which you'll be hosting your event. The second type of hotel is really just a known brand name. This might be a Hyatt or a Marriott, a staple for which guests might feel comfortable if they are traveling, that they know the name, it feels secure. And the third type of hotel that I would recommend would be an economical hotel. Just because it's economical does not mean that it has to be dirty or dingy. This type of hotel would offer guests still very great amenities, but it might be further from the location for which you'll be getting married, and simply just allow your guests to save a few extra dollars in their pocket so that they have time and the energy and the resources to splurge on the most amazing gifts for you. Just kidding. Well, I do hope that you have found these 10 tips to be very helpful to creating your guest list. Tell me, I want to know, are there any tips that have been helpful to your wedding planning? Drop a comment below and let me know. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel, as I do post weekly tips, tricks, and planning advice to help create your magic day. And if you would like to get in touch with me for planning, please feel free to visit me. Contact information is below. Till next time, take care.